Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's session on how to tackle the INSEAD essays. My name is Caroline Diarte Edwards. I'm a director at Fortuna Admissions. I was head of admissions at INSEAD for 7 years. I'm also an MBA graduate of the program myself. So I'm a huge fan of the school, and I'm thrilled that you are here today. And I'm looking forward to sharing some of my top tips on how to tackle the INSEAD questions. So we will dive straight in. Please do share your questions. So I'm going to be talking about the essays for about the next 30 minutes, and then I'll keep some time at the end to go through your questions. So as and when something pops into your mind, please feel free to enter it into the Q&A section, and I will go through that at the end. Okay, so first of all, before we get into each of the questions, and we will walk through each of the questions in turn, I wanted to share some important context about the role that these essay questions play in how you're evaluated as a candidate by the INSEAD Admissions Committee. So these essays are the opportunity for you to bring your application to life. So obviously they have many other elements that they're going to be reading as well. They will have your CV, they will have your recommendation letters, they will have your application form, they'll have your transcript. So this is the opportunity to give them some important context about who you are beyond those facts and figures. The great thing about the essays is that they are fully in your control. So of course, there are lots of elements of your profile that you cannot change. So you cannot change your professional trajectory. You cannot change your undergraduate track record. Your GMAT or your GRE, you may be able to change. But of course, the essays are entirely within your scope of control. So this is your opportunity to get across some key messages that you want the school to know about you. And what the admissions committee is looking to learn, they're looking to learn about you as a whole person. So they're looking to gain a holistic view of who you are. The school is evaluating you across different criteria. So they're looking at your academic background, your professional background, your international experience, and generally your fit with the school and the culture of the INSEAD community. And they're looking to understand what is it that you bring to the program that is different to what maybe some other candidate will bring. And your goal with your essays should be to pique the interest of the file reader, because of course, if they're interested to learn more, then what they will do is invite you to interview. So that's your goal with these essays, is to get them interested to learn more about you as a candidate. So you're not trying to tell them everything here. You shouldn't try to cram too much into your essays, but give them some key messages. So a bit more about what the schools are looking for. And this is true for all business schools, not just for INSEAD. So they're looking for clear communication skills. Of course, clear communication skills will be very important for you to succeed as an MBA student in the classroom, and then, of course, also in your future business career. They're looking to see if you've really thought through your career path and what you're going to get out of the program. They want to make sure that this is a well-considered decision, that it's not something that you've just decided to do at the last minute and you're just throwing an application in to see what happens. But they want to see that you've actually given it some considered thought, and that you have really spent some time getting to understand the school, understanding how it can help you move forward in your career, and understand how your career can evolve post-INSEAD. They're looking to see if you've got the character qualities that will make a successful MBA student and future MBA graduate. So that will be things like leadership skills, team working skills, emotional intelligence, and maturity. And they're looking to get a sense, as I said, of who you are beyond your CV. So they're looking to understand your personality, what makes you different, what makes you tick. They really do care about you as an individual, because they're bringing people together who will contribute different things in the classroom. And the INSEAD experience, as at other top MBA programs, is very much about peer-to-peer learning and building relationships with your classmates. And so they want to see what role you're going to play in the MBA community. Before you start writing, it's important to start with some introspection. So building some self-awareness about the path that you've taken to date, what has made you the person that you are, so that you can then go on to begin identifying some of the key messages that you want to get across in your application. So think about things like, what have been some of the key turning points in your life? What values have driven your the actions that you've taken at key moments? To ask yourself some of those deep and sometimes difficult questions to help to uncover some of the key points that actually may be really relevant for your application. An admissions coach can also be very useful at this point to help to uncover those elements. And also a good coach will have some perspective on the application pool that you're applying within and be able to see what are the things that you bring that could really stand out comparing to other candidates in the pool. So they'll have that context of the pool. So first of all, we'll talk about the career evolution essay. So the school is looking for you to provide a summary of your career, explaining the choices that you've made. They want a description of your current role, and they've asked you to be specific. So quantify where you can, employees, budget, clients, products, etc. So it's a pretty clear question. They've really signaled as much as they can what it is that they're looking for you to state here. And you've got about a page to do that. So that's a decent amount of space to get a story across. Now, keep in mind that they do have your CV. So you don't want to just repeat exactly what you've said in your CV. And they have those, hopefully some clear bullet points in your CV to explain what you've done and how your career has evolved over time. So what you want to do here is tell more of the story behind that. So get into explaining the motivation for why you have chosen to take the positions that you've taken. You'll want to dedicate a significant amount of space to describing your current role, or at least what you've been doing over the past year or 2 years. If you're in a very new role, then you might not want to spend so much time digging into that, and you might talk more about recent achievements in a previous position. Think about what the school is looking for and the qualities that they will value. So INSEAD is a school that really values international experience. So if there's any element of international experience in your career path, then it's great to be able to highlight that here. Make sure that you talk about your role in a way that is clearly understandable to someone who may not be familiar with your sector. Remember that FAR readers are reading a huge array of applications from people with backgrounds from across the world, from across all different industries. So don't make assumptions about what they may or may not know about your industry, and try to avoid, for example, using acronyms. If you have a very technical role, try not to focus too much on very technical details, but identify, for example, some transferable skills that you've built, perhaps in team working or leadership or project management, that will translate to your future post-MBA career. And you should be keeping in mind as you write this essay that you are laying the foundation for your career goals question. So the school want to see that there is some logical thread between what you've done in your career so far and what you want to do in the future. So think about highlighting the skills and experience in your career evolution essay that will be relevant to your future career. So I've got an example here for you from a candidate who's admitted to INSEAD. So he talked about what he did immediately following graduation. He landed his dream job in a major city, described the company, and he described what that would enable him to do. So getting exposure to senior leadership and hands-on experience. That had been an internship, but he was thrilled that he then got a full-time position with the company. He then describes the promotion, what that meant in terms of expanded scope. Be as concrete as you can in explaining your scope. He then had the opportunity to go on a secondment to a client company. So he talked about what he did there and the impact that he had on that client company. He then talked about coming back to his employer and how that secondment helped him to then build the company's account with that company where he'd been seconded. So that was a great opportunity for him to leverage that secondment experience. And then he finished with talking about his current role, where he's doing consulting work on a different continent, which is actually the continent that he hopes to work in post MBA. So that's a really nice way of linking to his future goals. So then the career goals essay, the school is asking you to describe your short and your long-term career aspirations, including your target geography, industry, and function, and how you plan to bridge the gap between where you are right now, where you want to be, and how INSEAD is going to help you get there. So be very specific about what they're asking for, the industry, the function, and where you want to be. It's a good idea to download the school's careers report because they give a lot of data about where graduates are going, the recruiters that are coming to school to recruit every year, because you want to make sure that the goal that you're presenting here is realistic. So the school wants to see that you are ambitious, but they also are keen to see that you have realistic goals. The school does not want to admit candidates who are going to come to the school and then be very frustrated because what they want to achieve is not possible, right? So it's good to dig into the careers data that the school provides to understand if the career path that you're aiming for is actually feasible. And you can name specific employers, for example. Now, most candidates, of course, are looking to make some transformation in your career. And the school looks at transformation across 3 dimensions. So they're looking at function, they're looking at industry, and they're looking at location. Some candidates will be looking to make a change across all 3 of those dimensions. That's okay, but you need to show that there's some logical thread in the skills that you've built in the past and the skills that the recruiter that you're targeting will be looking for. And then in this essay, you should identify the gaps that you have. So the gaps between where you are today and where you need to be post MBA. And then explain how INSEAD is a platform that will help you to bridge those gaps. And when you're discussing that, you need to show that you've really understood what INSEAD offers and try to go beyond the website. So of course, there's a wealth of information online. It's great if you can, for example, connect with current students or alumni, try to attend presentations that the school is hosting so that you get a deep sense of what the school is offering. And of course, it's very complex. There's the curriculum, there's the diversity of the student body. There's a lot of different opportunities through clubs and campus exchanges and so on. So there is a lot to learn. So please do invest some time in that before you work on this essay. The school wants to understand that you are genuinely motivated for INSEAD and that you're not just applying to a laundry list of schools of which INSEAD is one of many, and you really haven't gone much beyond a cursory review of the website. So do show your engagement with the school here. Then we get into the more personal essays. So INSEAD's Candid description essay asks you to describe yourself as a person and a leader, emphasizing the strengths and weaknesses you recognize in yourself. Explain how you're actively working on your development and share key experiences that have shaped you and provide examples. So 500 words, it's about a page. So what you want to do here is show that you have self-awareness, you have maturity, and that you are able to take a step back from yourself and identify some of the key messages that you want to get across about your strengths and about your story. You can't cover too much ground here. You can't tell them everything there is to know about you as an individual and a leader in 500 words. So you need to hone in on maybe 3 or 4 key points that you want to get across and illustrate those with some stories. You want to bring it to life. You don't want to just talk about things in very abstract terms. Stories can really help to make this much more vivid. When they ask about leadership, don't feel that it has to relate to an official leadership title. So it could be unofficial leadership experiences that you've had. So maybe you worked for a senior manager who was overstretched and burnt out, and you were able to step up and take unofficial leadership or responsibility for something that you might not otherwise have done. Or perhaps you've had a leadership role in an extracurricular capacity. So there are lots of different ways of being a leader, and you can draw on lots of different experiences in this essay. Please be honest about your weaknesses. It's really annoying to the file readers if you are disguising strengths as weaknesses. So, for example, if you offer your weaknesses, I'm such a perfectionist, I push myself so hard, it sounds inauthentic, and it's something that the file readers will have seen many times, and it's just going to provoke an eye roll. So please do be a bit more honest and specific about your weaknesses. And I know that candidates often struggle with this, and they sometimes struggle with acknowledging weakness and struggle with acknowledging failure. But that's a really important part of being a good student. Being able to acknowledge where you need to develop is an important part of having a strong learning orientation. And so that really is something that school is looking for. They're not expecting you to be perfect. Nobody is perfect. So please do be honest in addressing those weaknesses. And of course, you can show how you're working on them. And probably that's a work in progress. And perhaps even the MBA will help you to work on those elements further. I think it's nice in this question to draw on a mix of personal and professional examples. You could just draw on work examples if you want to, but I think that it's nice to give a sense of who you are outside of work as well. That can really help to give them a better sense of who you are beyond your professional persona. And keep in mind as well that you can also draw on experiences that go back in time to your childhood, even if that's something that really shaped who you are. So whereas with some other questions, you might want to focus more on what you've done the last few years, in this question, you can really go back to any point in time if that's relevant to the question. So I've got another example for you here to have a look through. So this is from a candidate who describes his experience of living in one country and then eventually moving due to civil conflict in his country of origin. And then he talks about the mix of cultures that they had in their family. And gives and really paints a picture here. Weekend family gatherings were a joyous mix of storytelling, spirited debate, and laughter around the table. So think about how you can give some examples or tell some anecdotes that will really bring your points to life. He goes on to explain how growing up in that very multicultural environment taught him some key qualities that are now part of who he is and part of what he brings to INSEAD. And so what I like in this essay as well is that he touches on both the personal and the professional. So he starts with that personal story and then goes on to talk about, as his career progressed, he realized that some of his earlier leadership instincts were holding him back. So he talks about how he worked on that, what he learned, how that is still a work in progress. So there's something to keep in mind is that there is no right or wrong way of tackling these essays. And so I offer these examples just as an illustration, but please don't take this as a template. There is no template for tackling these essays, but I wanted to offer you an example to show what can work well to perhaps spark some ideas for you. So the next question is about a stressful situation. So the school asks you to describe a highly stressful situation you faced and how you managed it. What did this experience teach you about yourself and your interactions with others? You've got 400 words. So do pick an example that has actually high stakes. So perhaps it's something, often candidates in this example for this question, will talk about a work example. So something where really it was something that actually was significant and had consequences. A good way of framing it is to use the STAR structure. So STAR stands for situation, task, action, and result. So what is the situation that you were faced with? What was your task in that situation? What action did you take? And then what was the result? So this is a behavioral question, and the STAR framework is a great technique for tackling any kind of behavioral question, and you can use that for other schools and also for interview questions. So think about how you can draw on the particular story that you're telling to get across what it is that you did. And it's quite possible that you're working as part of a team, and that's great, right? Because you also want to talk about interaction with other people, but don't always talk about what the team did, or do be specific about what your role was within the team and the action you took. And then it's important to show what you learned from that experience and perhaps how you've done things differently since that experience. Perhaps it didn't go as planned. Perhaps it sometimes the greatest learnings are from failures. So you can use an example here that it was a success, or you can draw an example that was a failure. To give an example, a candidate wrote about a demo that he was preparing with some colleagues for a client. And when they were rehearsing the demo, they realized that it wasn't going to work, and they had quite a short time frame to fix it, and tempers were flaring. And after that rehearsal, there were emails going back and forth that were really escalating the situation and not helping. So he took the initiative to organize a call between some of the key players in the team. And he took the lead in setting out, recapping what the situation was and beginning a brainstorm. So he was able to move beyond that situation where on email things were getting out of control, and get people actually talking to each other and calm down their tempers. And he was able to link that to, he's a very calm person and very good at staying calm under pressure. And that's also something that he talked about in his Candid description essay. So it's nice if you can perhaps draw on a theme that is illustrated elsewhere in your application as well. It helps to build a more coherent story. So there is a question in the application form underneath a table where you're asked about your activities and interests. And so the question asks you to describe the activities you've listed in the above table and explain how they have enriched your life. So, for example, skills developed, personal growth, or community impact. So in this description, I suggest honing in or focusing most of the discussion on 2 or 3 meaningful activities. Again, as with the Candid description essay, you can't cover everything that you've done. It's better to give some depth rather than trying to give too much breadth. The school likes to see evidence of activities that you've had a commitment to over time. It's great if some of those activities are ongoing rather than just things that you did in the past, perhaps just things that you did in college. There are no particular activities that are better than others. So it's not that you have to show sporting prowess or that you have done a huge amount of volunteering. There's no particular activity that they're going to give you more points for than others. But it's really about the depth, the commitment, and can you show perhaps that you've had some sort of impact or you've achieved something in that dimension. And what the school is looking to understand here is what will your contribution be? So the school will always take the perspective, and this is also true when they're looking at your professional experience, they'll take the perspective that your past performance is the best indicator of what you're going to do in the future. So if you're someone who has activities and interests and you're used to being engaged in life outside of your studies and outside of work, then you're more likely to be the type of student who's going to get involved in the life of the school. And of course, so much of the MBA experience goes on outside of the classroom, and that's a big part of the MBA experience, and that's a part of what the school is looking to build. They're looking to bring people together who are going to enrich the life of the school and enrich each other's lives. So they're looking to get a glimpse here of what kind of things you like to do, because perhaps you'll get involved in those things or something like that when you're at INSEAD. There is also an optional essay. So the school asked if there's anything else that was not covered in your application that you would like to share with the admissions committee. You can state that in up to 300 words. So this is a useful space to explain anything that is really important context for the school to understand. So perhaps you had a period in college when your grades weren't fantastic, and so you might want to explain what happened there. Perhaps you feel that your GMAT or your GRE is not fully reflective of your academic potential. Perhaps you don't have a recommendation from your current boss, so you might want to explain why that is. So just keep it brief and factual. Don't feel that you need to fill up the full 300 words. The file reader will really appreciate if you can keep things concise. Don't use this as a spillover from other essays, and don't use this because you've got another essay that you've written from another school that you really love and you just want to copy paste it in here because you think you spent a lot of time in that and you love the essay. It's not an overflow. It's not supposed to be just an extra spare essay. But you can also use it if you think that there's something that's really material to your candidacy that is not included elsewhere. So sometimes candidates will use this, for example, if they have some sort of side hustle. So maybe they have a day job, but they're also working on some sort of business outside of their day job. And so they might perhaps say a bit about that here. But if you don't have anything that's important to say, it's absolutely fine to leave this blank. It's much better to leave this blank than to just fill it up for the sake of using the space. But as I said, the file reader really appreciates it when you are concise. So a few last words about how to get started with your INSEAD essays. Don't rush into writing straight away. Do take some time to reflect. That's really important for you to help you to understand your candidacy better, understand your key strengths, what it is that you're bringing to the program, and what are the key messages that you want the admissions committee to learn about you. You can't say everything, right? There'll be a lot more that you could say about your application. So feel free to just focus in on a few of the key messages. And of course, remember that hopefully you'll get invited to interview stage. So that will give you an opportunity to tell more of your story then. As I said, the school is looking for some humility and an acknowledgement that you aren't perfect. So make sure that you show that authenticity in your application. When you've written your essays, please go back and just double check that you've answered the question. With some of the questions, there are sort of multiple components to what they're asking, and make sure that you've really addressed those. And try to show the motivation behind it and what it is that why that particular story, why that strength is important to you and something that you're proud of. So think about the so what behind your essays. And if you're getting stuck or if we can help in any way, we would love to hear from you. So you can sign up for a free consultation on the Fortuna website. So Fortuna, as you may know, we're a team of former admissions directors. I was admissions director at INSEAD, and I have a team of wonderful colleagues who've worked at all of the top schools. So we would be thrilled to help you with your applications. So I will now stop sharing my screen and move over to questions. So I'm really looking forward to seeing some of the questions that you have shared here. Okay, so I have a question. I'm working remotely in my home country with a team and an office based out of my country. So will it be considered as international experience or not? Yeah, so not everybody has the opportunity to work or study outside of their home country. The school understands that. So if you have experience of working with international teams, even if you're based in your home country, you should definitely make that clear in your application. And yes, that can be sufficient exposure and experience. Just really make sure it comes across very clearly what you've learned from those experiences, because the school is looking to make sure that they admit candidates who have cross-cultural fluency, who have the ability to work with people effectively from different backgrounds. That's very important. So they'll want to make sure that you bring that. Okay, next question. Me and my partner are applying together, and we also share our long-term entrepreneurship goal. How does the school respond to couples, and where should we mention this? Yeah, it's often the case that the school has couples applying, and often they can be admitted. So it's definitely worth telling the school. They like to know. It's not that it's going to be an advantage or disadvantage. It just is useful information for them to understand, rather than just reading two applications and then wondering, wow, these people have a very similar goal. That's kind of strange. So you do want to make the connection clear to them. That's absolutely fine. That's wonderful if you plan to work together in the future. So just explain it in a very factual way. As I said, it's not an advantage or disadvantage. It's just useful context for the school to have. In the Candid description essay, what should be the split of personal and professional stories? Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's nice to have a mix of both. I mean, perhaps 50-50 would be ideal, but it's really fine. You could draw on only personal examples, especially if you have some good leadership in an extracurricular capacity. You could draw on only professional stories. I personally think it's a bit of a missed opportunity if you only talk about professional experiences, because of course the school learns a lot about your professional experience from other parts of the application. They have those career-related questions, they have your resume, they have the recommendation letters. So you have more limited space to get that personal side across. And I think that can make it more interesting. So I would err on the side of making sure that you include some really good personal stories in there. In a stressful situation, can a personal story be told and maybe then linked to the professional aspect? Yeah, that's great. It doesn't have to be a professional example. It can definitely be a personal example, whether from your personal life or from an extracurricular situation. As I said, the important thing is that it's something that has real stakes, that there were consequences, and that you have something interesting to say about what you learned from that experience. Next question, if the short-term and long-term goals are very different, how do we convey it efficiently? Well, you do have a bit of space in that essay, so that's fine. I guess you want to show the evolution and how you're going to get there. You don't want the goals to feel disjointed in any way. And it's often the case that the candidates will need to explain multiple steps to where it is that they ultimately want to get, that's absolutely fine. It's great, in fact, that you've really thought that through and that you're realistic about the steps that you'll need to take in order to get to achieve your long-term vision. So in that case, just talk about how one role will build on the next, will provide the foundation for the next, and sort of show that logical thread. Is international experience a must for getting into INSEAD? So the school does really want to see international exposure. It's a very international program, and that's a big part of what people bring and what they learn from each other. As I said, if you don't have experience of living and working outside of your home country, then hopefully you can talk about international exposure that you've had with colleagues and teams in your home country. How important is the undergraduate GPA when looking at the overall profile? Is 3.8 out of 4 super low GPA when looking at class average? Would you need a significantly higher GMAT to offset this? What it really depends on, so the school will look not just at your GPA, but they'll look at the quality of the institution that you attended, how rigorous your undergraduate program was. So they'll take that into context as well. And then certainly if you're concerned about having a below average GPA, then definitely high GMAT can help to offset it. I mean, they are looking at your academic profile overall. The key thing with the academics is they're looking to understand, do you have the ability to keep up with a very fast pace at INSEAD? It is a one-year program. It's very intense. You'll have exams every 8 weeks. If you get behind, you really don't have much time to catch up. So they're looking to make sure that the candidates they admit have the academic capacity to flourish on the program. They really don't want to bring people in who are going to struggle or even fail. So you need to give them that certainty. And if your undergraduate track record isn't fantastic, then definitely you can compensate with the higher than average GMAT. And they may also take professional experience into account. So that person mentions that they working at MBB, working in consulting. So if you have, for example, a lot of quantitative analysis in your professional work, then it's good to reference that as well, because that helps to show that you have the analytical abilities that will support your academic progress at INSEAD. How transparent should we be about a redundancy on our CV? How would you recommend this gets incorporated into the application as a whole? Yeah, so definitely that's fine. The school understands that there are economic cycles, that companies go through ups and downs, and it's usually no fault of your own if you are let go. And often it's the younger members of staff who are let go first if there's a round of layoffs. So it's fine. It happens a lot, and plenty of people who go to top business schools have been let go from their job at some point. So you'll have an opportunity. You can explain that I would explain that, for example, in the optional essay about what happened there. And it sounds like in your case that you're perhaps working now. Sometimes candidates apply and they've been made redundant, and then they apply to business school and they're not working. That can work. They can be successful in their applications, but the school does prefer applications from candidates who are currently working. Or at least find something really useful that you're doing with your time, so that doesn't look like you just spent a few months working on your GMAT or your GRE and working on your business school applications. They want to see that you're productive and that you've somehow moved on from that experience of being laid off. So you don't have to make a big drama about it. I would just explain very factually what happened. And it's important to keep in mind, I mean, that File readers will often spot gaps, and they may spot questions or spot concerns in your application, and it's better to identify those and for you to address them proactively than to wait for the school to have to ask you about it. Sometimes the school will send a question to a candidate because they see that there seems to be a gap and it's not explained in the application. They may ask them about it by email or by phone, or maybe it's something that's brought up at interview. It's better if you can just be proactive at addressing that. Don't imagine that they're not going to notice that you have a gap in your resume or that there's an issue with your undergraduate transcript. They're very adept at picking up on these things, so don't sweep it under the carpet. Is the Indian technical product manager profile considered a highly common or saturated applicant pool at INSEAD? Well, the school does get a fair few candidates with that background, but you can stand out. So try not to focus, as I said, too much on technical aspects of your role. Pull out the elements that are really transferable skills. So team working skills, leadership skills, communication skills, project management skills that could be relevant to your post-MBA career. So try to get beyond some of the perhaps try to avoid some of the traps that such candidates may fall into, where they talk into much sort of technical detail about their role, which is not necessarily relevant for the business school classroom. And always keep in mind when you're working your application that the school is looking to understand what will other candidates learn, what will other students learn from you in the classroom, what is it that you bring to the discussions and the debates, both inside the classroom and outside of the classroom, and how can you mentor or support other students in their learning and in their journey through the program and post-MBA. So try to identify those elements of your background that could be really relevant for the INSEAD community. How much weightage do extracurriculars have in the application process? Can the extracurriculars impact on society, impacts on the society during my volunteer period be mentioned in the essays? Yeah, I mean, any impacts from your extracurriculars, that's great to mention. So in terms of the weight, extracurriculars do not carry the same weight as your professional experience and as your academic background. Those elements are definitely more critical to your application, but it's still an important part of conveying who you are. The school is looking to bring in students who are well-rounded, who have interest beyond the classroom, because they want to bring in students who are not just going to come to classes and take lots of notes and maybe even get very engaged in the discussions, but aren't going to get involved in the life of the school outside of the classroom. So they do take those extracurriculars as an indication of whether you're someone who has a life outside of work. And I know it's difficult because often INSEAD candidates by their very nature are incredibly busy professionals, and you don't have a lot of free time to engage in extracurriculars. So it may be that you're pointing more to things that you've done in the past, but do try, if you can, to talk about what it is that you like to do outside of work and study, even if it doesn't seem like it's tremendously weighty or you haven't had a huge impact in the last few months in what you've been doing. You just want to give a sense that you are an interesting person outside of work and study, and that you will be engaged in the community. And when they think about the community, of course, they're thinking about the INSEAD experience as well as life as an alum, because the INSEAD alumni network is incredibly active and engaged, and they're looking to bring in students who will be active members of that alumni community as well. So I think we've run out of time. Apologies to anyone whose question I didn't manage to get to, but thank you so much for joining today. Fantastic questions. I really hope that the session was useful. And so if you'd like to get in touch with us, we'd love to hear from you. You can sign up for a free consultation on the Fortuna website, and then you can also reach out to us at our email address, which is info@fortunaadmissions.com. Thank you, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your day.